everyone. I hope you're doing well on this Friday. We have a lot to talk about this morning in the context of a threat by President Trump that has accelerated in the last 48 hours because of an event involving big balls. Yes, I know people are already laughing at my thumbnail for this particular broadcast, but it involves him. And there's kind of no, I've taken to calling him tiny balls on the socials, by the way. You can feel free to use that if you would care to. But it is a kind of interesting incident that, you know, as per usual, has caused an absolutely explosive reaction from the president. So we have to talk about that. We have to talk about yet again this crazy Epstein meeting and a few other things concerning the concentration camp in the Everglades and RFK Jr. and a variety of other things that are on the list for today. So welcome to Resistance Live, my friends. First things first, I am Elizabeth Cronise McLaughlin. If you're new here, I'm a former Wall Street and human rights lawyer, and I now work in the arena of impact consulting, where I help people who want to change the world actually do it. If you are new here, you can kind of like subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, give us a like. Don't forget the bell notification. And for our visually challenged viewers, today I'm wearing a cream-colored top with a black jacket over top. My hair is pulled back. I'm a pink-skinned, green-eyed, dirty, blonde-haired woman. And I'm coming to you from my office in front of a bookshelf and a yellow utility cart. And I am also coming to you from occupied Muncie, Lenape, and Mohican land. Okay, so let's talk about what happened. And I have to say, I have a personal connection to this that is slightly hilarious to me. I don't want to laugh about violence, but I have a connection to this. It's pretty wild, actually. Okay, so here's what happened. A couple of nights ago, Big Balls and a woman, presumably like a woman he was on a date with, were standing in the 1400 block of Swan Street Northwest in Washington, D.C. I had a boyfriend during law school who lived in the middle of that block at 1435 Swan Street. It is a very peaceful neighborhood. It has been for like, you know, the last 25 years. And it is a tree-lined street. But as in any like major metropolitan area, like if you're standing around on a street, kind of darkened street at 3 o'clock in the morning, you kind of want to have your wits about you. So Big Balls was standing next to his car with this woman, and he was approached by a couple of teenagers, and the teenagers wanted his car, and he refused to give up the car. And basically there is, from there forward, there is a wild disparity of stories. Okay. First, what happened was Elon Musk took to X and claimed that Big Balls had been savagely beaten by a gang in Washington, D.C. Okay. Then the D.C. Metropolitan Police put out a public statement saying that they had intervened in an attempt by two 15-year-olds, not a gang, two 15-year-olds, to ask this guy a question about his car. Like, it wasn't even really clear from the initial DC police reporting that it was a carjacking attempt. But inevitably, what they said was, we intervened, we gave assistance to one person at the scene who was assaulted, and a couple of suspects, or one of the suspects, is still at large. It was something very vague like that, and it really didn't make it sound like such a big deal. Okay, then Trump, and I have to remind you all, Big Balls doesn't work for the federal government anymore. Yes, he was like one of the most notorious Doge staffers, also himself affiliated, by the way, with cyber criminal activity, just in case you forgot about this, okay? Not like his hands are completely clean, okay? But thereafter, Trump posted a picture of Big Balls sitting on the ground with blood coming out of his nose, and what appears to be like he's shirtless with, like, you know, smeared blood on his chest and on his pants and down one of his arms. And it's not gory, like it's kind of gory, I guess, but also it sort of looks like the kind of injury you would sustain if somebody broke your nose. Okay. It's not like he was like, you know, savagely beaten to the point that he was like on a stretcher, right? Or anything like that. Okay. So out of all of this, because, you know, they only really care about, like, you know, white men on their side of things, Trump has announced that he thinks DC should be federalized and taken over because crime is running rampant. Okay. And Elon Musk is basically saying the same thing, that they should federalize DC. Now, one of the things that that I want everybody to kind of understand at this point, okay, is that Trump does not have the authority to federalize the District of Columbia. And I've said this in multiple places since this story first started breaking, that in order for the federal government to take over the District of Columbia, legislation would have to be passed through both houses of Congress. And of course, we know that the House is on an extended break way beyond initial vacation plans because they They didn't want to vote on the Epstein files, right? So like Congress isn't even in session right now. So he doesn't have the authority to do that. He can't just like wave a magic wand and be like, we're federalizing the District of Columbia. But also, he's done something else, which is that he's kind of now redirected law enforcement from like ICE, the FBI, a couple of other agencies to randomly patrol the District of Columbia this weekend. And we all know how that's going to end up, because I can guarantee you that it's not going to be white people that they're patrolling. Okay. I have to point something out. Okay. Say what you will about like crime in America. Okay. But your average carjacking attempt does not require the taking over of a city by federal troops. And the only reason why this is happening is because he coincidentally happens to be a former DOJ staffer. Like still recently had some kind of affiliation with the Social Security Administration, but is being described now in most of the reporting as no longer a federal employee. Okay, so he's not even like associated with any of them, but that shouldn't matter. Okay, a single individual being the victim of a crime does not require the federal government to take over an entire city to hunt for Black people, because that's basically what they're doing. And again, there's no authority to do it. Like if he tries to federalize DC, there will be a lawsuit filed by Mayor Muriel Bowser and probably a bunch of other people immediately. Like immediately. There is no legal authority to do it. DC is its own self-governing city. So all of this is kind of emblematic of where we are right now, right? Because they don't have any problem with sticking brown people in concentration camps. They don't have any problem with like ICE thugs beating up the father of 4 U.S. enlisted Marines, right? They don't have a problem with, their goons shattering car windows and terrifying children to drag pregnant women away from their kids. No problem with that. But, one of their guys gets into a little scuffle over a car at 3 a.m. on a dark street in Washington, D.C., and God forbid all hell breaks loose. So again, really important here to kind of mind that not only is this a kind of like straw man situation, because the other thing I'm just going to say here is like, I have to say it again. I mean, like I've broken my nose, right? You break a nose, it's bloody. Okay, that doesn't mean he was like severely beaten, right? I just want everybody to understand that it already sounds, based on what the police is saying, not that I often trust police reporting, but the police are saying something completely different from what Elon and Trump are saying on social media, okay? So again, you have to be really mindful of the disinformation here. But, even still, he has no legal authority to do it, and they're blowing it up to use it as like a culture war issue. And again, same as it ever was with these folks, right? It just kind of like gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Okay, so that's what's happening. No, he doesn't have the authority to do it. I hope that answers all the questions about this on the Patreon feed this morning. By the way, reminder, if you like what we do here, please become a paid subscriber at patreon.com/resistancelive. You get to ask me questions and join bonus broadcasts. There's going to be one this afternoon. And support all the good work that we do here. We appreciate our Patreon subscribers very much. Okay, so the Epstein saga. Okay, so Wednesday I did a broadcast on the looming meeting that was supposed to happen at the White House, right? And then Trump got asked about that meeting in front of JD Vance, and JD Vance said, "There's no meeting. It's all fake news." That was leaked, and then it was announced that the meeting was canceled. Well, guess what? The meeting went forward anyway. They moved it from JD Vance's vice presidential residence to the White House. But the meeting went forward anyway, with Kash Patel, with Pam Bondi, with JD Vance, and with potentially other folks. Now, I'm going to say it again, as I've said many times this week. They would not be having a meeting on how to handle the Epstein crisis if they were planning to release the files. So every single thing about this meeting has to be seen through the lens of an ongoing conspiracy to keep these files from becoming public, right? It's a cover-up. There's no reason to meet to strategize about the Epstein situation unless you're actively engaged in a cover-up. And we also know that Kash Patel was apparently very angry at Pam Bondi for not releasing the files. So who knows what kind of back and forth is going on there. But in any event, in the event that there is like huge breaking news this afternoon, because there often is on Friday nights, as we all know, or over the weekend, or they release the transcript of the questions that Todd Blanche, very carefully asked, that I'm sure did not concern what Trump had done or not done. just please know that there's no indication here that they're about to magically do the right thing. And every single thing that comes out of that interview with Ghislaine Maxwell, you should take with like a Salt Lake-sized grain of salt, okay? Because that's part of the cover-up too. She would not have been moved to a minimum security prison that required waiving her sex offender status if there wasn't some kind of game going on here about what she knows, all right? So again, I said it yesterday, I'm going to say it again. This isn't going away. This is sticking. It's sticking and it is not going away. Okay. Late yesterday, we had a temporary restraining order entered against the Everglades concentration camp, pejoratively known as Alligator Alcatraz. This temporary restraining order prohibits the further construction of the camp on environmental grounds because it could potentially damage the Everglades, which are, of course, a national park. One of the things, however, that is unclear at this point is that the camp is already housing detainees and American citizens in some instances because, like, it's essentially a black ops site with no control, right? There's no due process. There's no means for anybody inside of it to kind of communicate with anybody outside of it, unless and until people are allowed to tour it, like Maxwell Frost did. There's no legal process being administered. They're just rounding people up and sending them there. And on top of it, it's like very dangerous conditions, right? The Florida Everglades during hurricane season, intense, where there's already been flooding. There are reports of rotten food and, they have to truck their sewage out. There's footage of multiple ambulances leaving there during the day. Again, very, very evil conditions. But for the time being, they're not allowed to build any more of it. I don't know what's going to happen to the people who are in it. I don't think anybody does at this point. There's also another lawsuit pending at this point concerning detaining people there, period. But we're waiting for additional rulings on this. So that's where things stand right now. And I have to say, again, the judiciary, for the most part, until you get to the Supreme Court, is backstopping this administration quite a bit. This is like, there's been more than 100 temporary restraining orders entered against the administration, some of which they're not following. I think the last reporting that we saw on this was that something like a third of the court orders were being defied. But all that said, this is an important development, and we need people fighting back every way that they can, including in court. Okay. Somebody asked me a question on the Patreon feed about RFK Jr. canceling all mRNA research. Okay. We know this man, in addition to being like cuckoo, is a wild rabid anti-vaxxer. And the thing that's the most disturbing about this to me is that mRNA vaccines were showing the greatest promise in the direction of a cure for cancer that we have seen in our lifetimes. And all of that research now has been completely shut down. All federal funding of that research now is gone. So it doesn't bode well for not just the health of the United States, but like the health of the world, because so much pharmaceutical technology is developed here. And, I've said to you all before, you should get your COVID boosters now. My doctor said to me, wait until the flu shot comes out, but get it as soon as it's available this fall, because there's not going to be enough to go around. At least that's what the MDs are hearing at this point. And all of this is because he's a quack, and his ideas are not at all grounded in science. If you've seen any of the videos, they're being just ripped apart by epidemiologists and general practitioners and medical researchers. And I don't know what to tell you guys. Elections have consequences. And one of them is that somebody gets appointed to the Department of Health and Human Services, and that person gets to dictate policy. So there are, again, court challenges to some of this, including particularly about grants being cut off. And there will probably be pretty close to immediate legislation about the grants that have been terminated on mRNA research. We'll see whether or not a TRO is entered there and the funds are distributed. We have seen some success, by the way, on that front in recent weeks. We've seen success in funding being cut off in various ways being restored. One example of this was that the funding that was cut off to public schools in this country in July, one day before it was supposed to hit bank accounts to address things like special education, was restored as a result of court challenges. So we shall see. But on the other hand, again, does not bode well. Does not bode well. All right. I am on vacation next week. In fact, our whole team is. We're all taking our annual summer break. So I will not be here live at all next week, but there will be a bonus broadcast for our Patreon subscribers this afternoon, as I already mentioned. If you want to get in on that, that's our more informal Ask Me Anything broadcast. And today we are going to be talking a little bit about like strategic messaging, because I've already had a question on this. When you're faced with people who like don't know what to do in this environment. All right. So we'll be talking about that a little bit more. We're also going to get to talk about anything else that people want to ask me, but we will not be here live at all next week. There will be an educational training video, both this coming Monday and the following Monday on our Ripple Effect Institute channel. This coming Monday, we get to introduce you to one of our Ripple Effect Institute members who is changing his entire community through community gardening. I love this interview. Like, it's great. You're going to learn a lot, like a lot. He's really remarkable. And we'll have more interviews with our Ripple Effect Institute members who are creating their own ripple effect in the world in coming weeks. But I'm on vacation next week, and I hope you all have a wonderful and restful week while I'm gone. Somebody asked me, how am I supposed to keep up on the news when you're gone? Well, you can read Heather Cox Richardson, who I read every day. She's amazing. Go to her Substack. I'm not a fan of Substack right now, but like, you can go read her. She's great. Right. And you'll get like a pretty straightforward, just the facts, ma'am, kind of download of what's happened on any given day. And I will also just remind everybody that, as I've said many times on this broadcast this week, you should beware of clickbait right now. Please only read things that are like, reliable and not inflammatory. That's my best advice for the week. But I will catch you all back here a week from Tuesday on our next live broadcast. I'll catch our Patreon people on our bonus broadcast this afternoon. And you can head on over to the Ripple Effect Institute YouTube channel for lots of good free training and inspiration in the interim. Again, two Monday videos, pre-recorded videos dropping on that channel between now and when I'm back. All right, my friends, lots of love to all of you. I will catch you all on the other side, and I wish you a great end of summer. All right, I'll see you in about 10 days live. If you're not on Patreon, then I'll see you this afternoon. All right, bye.